All right. Well, then let's recap the wild card week. There were some interesting. The Browns, I want to say, probably the biggest surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of scared that they might just fumble it and
Find a way to blow it there.
find a way to blow it because they came out too hot and Cleveland can't have nice things.
Well, that and like so many things had to happen for them to get that. Like 4 turnovers right away.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it was absurd what was going on.
Yeah. But man, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, one, they really only needed after the first half, they really only needed 1, maybe 2 more scores to lock the game up. So I don't think they had as much. The only time in the second half where they had some scaredness, some we got to get going, was when Pittsburgh made it close. Before that, they were just kind of oh, well, why would we try? Because they're not even close. But yeah, they took advantage of all the turnovers. They took advantage of Pittsburgh's mistakes. That's what a playoff team does. A bad team, a team that doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs, doesn't score a touchdown off of basically all those turnovers, which the Browns did. Taking advantage of your opponent's mistakes is one of the biggest parts that makes a good team good.
Yeah. How about Roethlisberger making a nice business decision on that first
that fumble? Oh, that was worse than Cam Newton in the Super Bowl, dude.
I'm not going to worry about it. It's only the playoffs.
That was worse than Cam Newton, man.
That was bad. That was very bad.
It was just a horrible start. I didn't watch this very beginning of the game. In fact, I went on Twitter and then saw it blowing up.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I gotta check this game out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw it when I was done working. It was 7-0, and I was just like, oh, that's interesting. And then I look, and the first play I saw was that Jarvis Landry touchdown pass, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I was watching by myself. Abigail's in the other room, and they just score again, and I'm like, or get a turnover. I'm like, oh my goodness, this doesn't happen. This happens to the Browns, not for the Browns.
Right.
They almost did brown it up though, and obviously, yeah, like you said, they only won by 9 points by the end of the game.
Right.
Or 11. No, it was 11, but still.
At the end of the game, it was just, I figured Pittsburgh, if they'd stop turning the ball over, would probably score.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they outscored them 30-13 right before halftime. They outscored them 30-13. That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, but when people are like, oh, they scored 35 in the first half, why did they score 70 points in the whole game? It's they're not going to get 4 turnovers in a half.
Right.
That's just not going to happen again.
You can't just speak that into existence. It doesn't. Yeah.
Well, at that point, when they get to the second half, they're like, all right, let's just try to. We're up by this much. Let's just try to hold on to the ball, get first downs. Do we need touchdowns? It'd be nice, but if we don't, we're not going to be overly aggressive. We're not going to put the ball in harm's way. We'll take our time.
Yeah, and it was only 35-23. That's as close as it got.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh my gosh, I know momentum was a big part of it, but because the Steelers had scored 17 unanswered, but at the same time, or 16 unanswered because they went for 2.
They also didn't even do that there. Yes.
Yeah. But they were only they still had 2 touchdowns to make up. It wasn't like the Browns were were actually crumbling. They almost did, but then they were like, oh, hey, this is kind of getting close. Let's score a touchdown. And they did.
Yeah. What do you think was the biggest – we talked about how the Steelers was obviously a negative surprise, but what's the other negative surprise team from this week's wildcard games?
Oh, it's got to be the Seahawks.
The Seahawks were ugly.
It has to be.
Yeah.
The offensive line was definitely a huge part of that. But I think we knew that was going to be a competitive game. I think we probably figured that's probably going to be the best game of this week. Besides maybe
the Ravens Titans, but yeah.
I want to say the Bears just having no offense the entire game until the very end.
I expected that though. Come on.
3 having 3 points until the last 2 minutes of the game.
The last play.
Yeah.
I thought they would have I thought they would have kept it somewhat respectable, but also it's not like the Saints threw up a billion points on them. Like they only scored.
Well,
They only scored once in they scored once in the first quarter and then in the third and the fourth. Like it wasn't like the Bears were just like.
Drew Brees has a noodle arm though. They're going to have to ride that defense if they want to have any chance of continuing much further. Because I genuinely believe the Bucs have a good opportunity against them this week.
I do too.
Well, and that was another surprise was. I mean, it's almost a good surprise for the Washington.
Oh yeah, Taylor Heineke.
Kind of a bad surprise. Like the Buccaneers should have handled Washington a little bit better. They obviously we've seen how good they can be, but sometimes they flirt with playing down to their competition. Like I don't think the game was ever really within doubts. Like there were a couple times where you're like, oh, Washington, like if this happens and they sack Brady and then he throws a pick, then they could win. But I mean, they should have won by more than one score.
I think a lot of it was, I mean, they let Heineke get out and run. I mean, he was just kind of out of his mind.
The other thing is it's hard to plan for Heineke because he's had such limited time in the NFL. You can film on him and that's what he said. He was able to create. They underestimated his legs clearly.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only film you have on him is like against very poor XFL and AAF competition, basically.
Yeah, and I thought it was a little bit, I guess, stubborn on Todd Bowles' part, though, because it's like, all right, he just kept sending crazy pressure there at the end of the game. And never had a spy for Heineke at all. I'm like, dude, the dude's running for like 50, 60 yards on you in the game. I'm like, you have to put somebody to spy him. And they didn't, But I think there was an article written after the game. That's why the Bucs got Tom Brady right there, though. I mean, they got him for those kind of games because last year, they would not have won that game, right?
Right.
They've had all the big plays, available to them in the past. Jameis made a ton of big plays last year, but in the playoffs or in big games, you need a guy who's going to take care of the football, who's going to check it down when he needs to, he's not going to lose the game for you in the first quarter by throwing 3 interceptions and suddenly you got to come back, right? And that's why they got Tom Brady. They've had the defense. The defense is super athletic. They get Devin White back this week too, by the way. Super athletic, get after the passer or whatever. But that's why they got Tom Brady for games like that. Where it's pretty vintage as far as Brady goes. Just lead him. You need a big score late in the game. Leads him down, gets the score, kind of ices the game.
What do you guys think was the best playoff game to watch most entertaining playoff game to watch this past week?
I mean, the beginning of the Browns game, just because it was so unbelievable.
That was entertaining. For sure. The Ravens Titans game for me was the most I don't know. That was the most hotly contested, I think, because it was like, I don't know. I just enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed watching the chess match between the two coaches. The Ravens stomping on the logo at the end of the game was kind of funny.
I actually think it's the first one. I think it was the Colts.
I was going to say, yeah, I thought that was my.
There is leaked footage of me standing within nose hairs of the television screen.
Can confirm.
Yes. I'm sure my wife sent that out to the whole family.
Can confirm.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was ready to go to my parents' house, but like they were about to kick a really long field goal, and then like penalties happened, and then things kept changing in the very end. There.
That was good. That was a good football game.
Yeah.
That was a very good football game. I mean, you just see the differences in the teams too. Like, okay, so the Colts just did not have enough explosive plays.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just could not keep. I mean, the Bills they probably overall managed the Bills to play them pretty much toe to toe, if not maybe even a little better in certain aspects of the game. But they could not keep up with the Bills' explosive plays. I mean, Allen made some plays that game that just. Phillip Rivers can't make those plays. Not anymore.
Yeah, he pretty much had to bank on Nyheim Hines breaking it 50 yards down the field. That's what he did a lot of times. He did little dump noodle arm passes to. Yep. I had to tweet him why does Phillip Rivers throw such a ninny?
He does. I mean,
he does.
He has no arm.
Yeah, and the thing is with the Colts, they really don't have many players with the capability to be explosive.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor can be.
Yeah.
You can see a little bit from Nyheim Hines, but like they're probably most like
Why?
Ty, and he had 2 catches for 32 yards, and it's like,
and Ty is not what he was 2 years ago either.
I know, but like, but still, like there's a lot of receivers in the league who aren't what they were 2 years ago, but in a playoff game, they still would have showed up and been the best player on their team. Like if the Bengals made AJ Green is not close to the player he was a couple years ago. If they made a playoff game, you would want AJ Green to catch 100 yards and like 7 catches and 2 touchdowns. Like, and he would try to do that, but like T.Y. Hilton, I didn't see the coverages on him, so maybe he was just smothered every time, and that's why Pittman got so open on some of those, and the tight ends were so open. But
I think Pittman's better.
I feel like, yeah, if T.Y. Hilton is going to be your best receiver, which he ought to be, with just like how they
T.Y.'s been a top 10.
How their team is.
I think T.Y. Hilton's been a top 10 wide receiver for 1 year in his NFL career. He was overhyped for so long.
I'm saying on the Colts team, if you look at the receiving core, he's the best receiver. Like,
hey, Zach Pascal, man.
That was a fumble.
Yeah, but like
that was a fumble.
Yeah, but that was a fumble. That was ridiculous.
Right.
But if you are the coach of this team, you want T.Y. Hilton to be your best receiver,
Sure.
and he just isn't.
Yep.
And like when you have to throw to your tight ends like 50 times to be competitive, like that's not how you win playoff games.
No, I agree. I think the most I know you were talking about it earlier, Isaiah, where the Ravens are kind of boring to watch, which they can be for sure, but the way they got Hollywood the ball, he might have had like 8-9 catches in that game. It was over 100 yards. The way they got him the ball was actually interesting because they had not done that most of the year. I mean, just quick swing passes, just quick. I mean, that first little dump off screen they had when he came in motion behind Lamar, like that's the way you have to get that guy involved.
You have to get speed and space. Even if it's the NFL, it's hard to get speed and space in the NFL, but they made it work.
He's not a great route runner. Like he's not going to just create his own like separation all the time. So you've got to scheme it open a lot of times. But if he can get the ball with any kind of space, I mean, that guy can fly. So that was the biggest thing. I think that's why they were able to really just remain balanced enough. You know, they're obviously going to lean run pretty much every game that they're in. But they were able to remain balanced enough. And you got, a couple passes to Mark Andrews here and there. And then obviously Lamar breaks a long run and then they're right there. And I think that was pretty much the difference in the game, in my opinion, for the Ravens on offense. Because if you remember last year when they, when they got beat or two, when they just couldn't really do that. They had no kind of passing game, and they were just, hey, we're gonna go for it on every 4th and 3 or shorter or whatever, and we're just gonna run the ball down your throats. And it's like you have to have something else. It doesn't need to be anything amazing, it doesn't have to be anything spectacular necessarily, but especially when you have a weapon like Hollywood with his speed, you have to get him the ball somehow. You got to get him 10 touches a game.
Yeah, I just and I don't. Maybe my words aren't best put that the Ravens are boring because they're obviously complex and they obviously have some great plays where Lamar will break off a run. I think it's just I just look at how their team is and I see the potential for them to be so much more exciting than they are. Sure. I want to see Lamar breaking tackles in the pocket and getting out and chucking it to Brown, who runs past everybody. I want to see that. I want to see Mark Andrews bully his way past some guys, and Des Bryant look like he did have some flashes, but I don't know. They just run the ball and run the ball and run the ball, and then I don't know. It's just I want them to do so much more than they do, and I think that's why it's a tough time for me to watch them.
Lamar's not that type of quarterback, though, and that's what they kind of got to deal with. They got to give and take, and that's why they run the offense the way they do. Lamar as a quarterback and just as a pure passer is probably bottom 10 of starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, maybe
bottom 5.
I mean,
yeah,
he's got a cannon, so
it's just the accuracy. He's going to miss a lot of passes. So and that's maybe why they haven't invested into wide receiver. They got Hollywood Brown obviously because they wanted to have at least one more standout receiver. But then if your next step is Willie Snead, and then you a guy you just picked up off practice squad that hasn't played in 3 years, Des Bryant, and then you have a good tight end like Mark Andrews. But they have those quality players up front in the offensive line, and they have some solid running backs because that's what they need to get the offense to work the way Harbaugh wants it.
And I think the other thing, keep in mind, at least in this game, and they do this every game, but like more so in this game, like they wanted to keep Derrick Henry on the sideline. So they are going to try to run the ball, take as much time as possible. I mean, I know Henry probably had, 20, 25 carries for like 40 yards.
They kept him to 40 yards. That is
18 carries for 40 yards.
Yeah, that is incredible for against that guy. And I think a lot of it is, 18 carries for him, that's okay, but that's not that much. Really, if you're the
that dude's hauling 32 in a playoff game in most situations.
If you're the Titans, you want to give him double that, in the playoffs.
Especially in the playoffs, yeah.
If you can. You want to ride that guy because he's going to wear on teams. When he gets 25 plus carries, eventually they like we talked about before on the show, like people don't want to tackle that guy eventually, late in the game. And the Ravens were able to keep him on the sideline. I think that had a big you made Ryan Tannehill try to beat you, and that wasn't going to happen. So
right,
yeah.
No, maybe I'm just wishing that Lamar was Deshaun Watson,
or even like Michael Vick. Because Michael Vick, you could rely on throwing too.
Yeah, because he could just he would roll out and he'd run and he'd have incredible runs, but he would just chuck the ball too.
He could throw.
He would just dot someone up, and it's just I think with Lamar, it's just okay. If Lamar does something awesome, it's gonna be on his feet.
Right.
It's not gonna be through the air. And I think maybe that's why I look at it and I'm just man, I really want him to do something awesome through the air because I think he could have the potential. I just they know their identity, they do it well, but I just man, I want to see him break 3 sacks and chuck a ball down the field.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Everyone likes to see a well-versed offense completely, but the Ravens got to do what they got to do to win, and it's working for
sure.
them. So.